Do you believe in our founders' vision for America? That our republic will only survive if we are an educated and informed people who know our rights and duties. Since 1844, Hillsdale College has sought to educate all who wish to learn about these timeless principles of self-government. For more than 50 years, the college has worked to spread that mission by sending Imprimis to millions of Americans. Imprimis features some of the best speeches given at Hillsdale events, and now an audio version of the popular Speech Digest is available in a new podcast of the same name. And, like the print publication, Imprimis, the podcast, is always free. Listen to the best arguments from speakers such as Chris Rufo, Molly Hemingway, Mark Stein, and Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn, read by Hillsdale students. Subscribe today to listen to Imprimis at podcast.hillsdale.edu. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Bubble, a Hillsdale College Career Services production where we take you outside the classroom and into the professional arena to bring you special tips and tricks from recent alumni in all areas of practice. This show is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. I'm Lauren Scott, and joining me today is Brittany Baldwin, a 2012 alumna, former speechwriter for the White House, and founder and owner of Illuminate Consulting. Thank you for joining me today, Brittany.
It is wonderful to speak with you, Lauren. I'm really excited to be here today.
Tell me how you originally got into the career of speechwriting.
Absolutely. So it was really all due to Hillsdale. When I went to Hillsdale, I planned on being a teacher. My mom was a teacher. She worked at a classical school that she had helped start, and she was my biggest inspiration. And I still have so much admiration for every teacher. It's an incredible calling and an amazing way to impact so many people. But while I was at Hillsdale, I actually was a George Washington Fellow. And as you know, as part of that program, you are required to spend a semester in D.C. So I reluctantly did so, only to find out as I was working at the Heritage Foundation that I really liked writing. And I still thought, well, I could never have a career doing that. And then I went back to Hillsdale. John Miller had just begun his first semester there. I took his advanced writing class, and I started to think, maybe I could have a career in writing. And then that same semester, Peter Robinson, who helped write the Berlin Wall speech for President Reagan, spoke at a CCA. And for some reason, I got in my head that maybe I could do that maybe I could be a presidential speechwriter. So that's what inspired me to pursue this profession.
You worked for Senator Ted Cruz as a speechwriter. What was that experience like?
It was a great way to really be fully immersed in politics and also in learning how politics works and governing works in the U.S. Senate. I was so fortunate to have the opportunity to work for Senator Cruz, and I learned a lot. I think it was a great learning experience in the sense that, you know, I had never been a speechwriter until then, so I started at the very bottom. I started in the front desk answering phones and giving White House tours, and someone in his office told me something I never forgot, which is, you know, even in this position, you can learn so much if you make good use of your time. And I never forgot that. I only stayed in the front office for about a month or two, and then I moved into the press office. And initially, I was just the press assistant. So I would volunteer for any possible writing experience. You know, writing even little scripts for videos or press statements or op-eds. And within about 8 months, they asked if I would be the deputy speechwriter. And then after that, about a year later, he ran for president, and I moved over to the campaign and was his only speechwriter on his presidential campaign. So that job in particular, working on his campaign, was the hardest job I've ever done because it was such trial by fire, having to write so quickly all of the time. But it is definitely what prepared me for the White House. And I think if I hadn't have had that experience, I don't think I would have been prepared for the White House. And I also think that probably that 1 year of working on a presidential campaign would have been worth like 3 or 4 years working anywhere else because of the volume that you have to write every single day.
What did your daily work look like as a speechwriter for Ted Cruz?
Well, it obviously varied quite a bit from when I was in the Senate to then moving to the campaign. So I'll talk a little bit about both. When I was in the Senate, it might be helping with a floor speech or writing an op-ed or preparing remarks for, one of the many groups he was speaking to, whether it was a group like a faith group, for instance, in Washington, D.C., or a group of constituents like business leaders back in Texas. But then moving over to the presidential campaign, it was much more chaotic. It was more like, okay, the president, he has 3 sets of remarks he's giving this next day. Can you draft all of them? And then can you also write these press releases? Oh, and can you write an op-ed? So it was just kind of a deluge every day. And obviously, when you're writing at that volume, you're not able to always necessarily give each speech the time it needs and deserves. So that is a big learning experience. Now I would do things a lot differently. But at the time, you really just have to do the best you can. And of course, when he is on the stump, most politicians on the stump, they are, in some cases, giving the same speech over and over again. But they may, be speaking to different groups and have to modify significant portions or even have, entirely new speeches. But then, of course, there's the big election night speeches during the primaries, and those are the most important. So I think, those deserve really having the time to carve out and think through what is the campaign's vision and what are they doing to set them apart and how can we convey that rhetorically.
How did the opportunity come about to work for Ted Cruz?
Well, really, I think this is one of the things that I have learned to believe. Most of the time, people, employers are not going to come looking for you. You have to go out looking for them. And so when I was at Hillsdale, I watched Ted Cruz ascension to the Senate, and I was immediately interested in it, having been from Texas and having known about him because of some of the people I had worked for during an internship in Houston. So I was immediately interested in him and in working for him in the Senate, but I had no idea how I would accomplish that. So what ended up happening was he actually spoke at Hillsdale's graduation in 2013. At the time I was working at Hillsdale, I worked at Hillsdale for 1 year. And so someone at the college very kindly offered to let me be the one to give him a quick tour of campus. What I didn't realize is that he pretty much always runs late. So our tour of the campus was literally walking from Saga to the library, and that was pretty much it. But nonetheless, I wrote a very short article on the Detroit News's political blog, and I printed it out, folded it up, and wrote a handwritten thank you note to him and sent it to him. And about a week later, I got a call from his office asking if I would like to have an informational interview, which basically is saying we're not even necessarily interviewing you for a job. We may not even have a job, but we're just going to talk to you and get to know you. So that was kind of the start. And then from there, I ended up getting a real interview, soon after that and getting the job.
When you stopped writing speeches for Ted Cruz, what was the next job that you took?
So I worked actually for his campaign for a few months, but then I moved over to Freedom Partners, which was at the time kind of like the chambers of commerce for all of the Coke network organizations. So I wrote for a number of their leaders, and that's what I did for about 6 months.
And then how was your experience becoming a speechwriter for the White House after you had been a speechwriter for Ted Cruz?
Yes. So it was honestly amazing. One of the incredible things about working in the White House is you get to work with a team of speechwriters, and I enjoyed that a lot more than working alone all the time. And I also found that it helped me constantly get better, because I did have colleagues who always pushed me to be better. And I think that was, it is such a gift as a writer to always have a good editor. So I was very grateful for that. And I think obviously the two principals are very different. Ted Cruz is a lawyer, and he's very eloquent, and he's can be a little on the lawyerly side of things. Donald Trump is very straight and to the point and very kind of bold in his statements, and likes lots of short, powerful, declarative statements. So writing for both of them was very different, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to write for President Trump, because as a writer, it's really refreshing to get to be so bold and clear about what you mean, and to not have to kind of try to couch it in a lot of nuances. So I thought that was very powerful, especially when it came to the issues that I cared a lot about, like protecting the lives of mothers and their unborn children, and many other issues as well, but certainly that one.
What is one of the greatest challenges of speechwriting that most people wouldn't expect?
Well, I think I learned this to a certain extent the hard way, which is, I think initially I thought that my job as a speechwriter was simply to listen to what my principal wanted to say, take really good notes, and then turn that into a speech. What I learned is that a lot of the times the principal has no idea what they want to say. They haven't had time to think about it. And the job of the speechwriter is to basically bang your head against the wall to figure out what they should say based on what you already know about their positions and beliefs, and to come up with the new ideas that can help them advance their policy goals.
With a time-consuming job such as speechwriting for the White House, how did you manage to balance your social life as well as your faith life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would certainly say that my life, certainly tilted very heavily towards my job. That took up the majority of my time. But when it came to my faith, I made a decision early on that was easy for me in the sense that I had been in the practice of it for a while, of making sure that I put God first in my day, which, for me meant prayer, going to Mass. And then I would even take breaks sometimes during the day and go take a walk, pray. And that really helped me to keep my sanity, and also not to lose perspective. I think one of the hardest things in the White House is you can start to think in a weird way that the world revolves around you, even though you're there to serve other people. And so a very good way I found to always keep perspective and remember that this was about serving the country and ultimately serving God was to actually spend time praying. And when it came to my friends, that was certainly a very big challenge. I know I wasn't as good of a friend as I could have been in making the time to see all of my friends, but specifically in the White House, I became friends with a number of wonderful individuals, and so we would definitely take little coffee breaks frequently. I might plan 1 or 2 coffee breaks a week, maybe even more at times, where even if it was only for 30 minutes, I at least got to touch base with someone, which really kind of also kept me going, because I'm a big people person, and yet I sat at my desk all day writing, and so it was it was very refreshing for me to also be able to have even a short break and talk to someone there.
When you left your job at the White House, you founded a company called Illuminate Consulting. Tell me about the inspiration behind founding this company and the purpose of the company itself.
Sure. So I was going to move to New York. I did move to New York very soon after I left the White House. And so I decided, either I could find a job in New York or I could start my own company. And it became very clear to me that starting my own company was going to be a great opportunity, even if it wasn't something I had ever envisioned. I never wanted to be out on my own. I like working with other people, but the right doors opened at the right time, and I had clients coming to me from the beginning. And so I decided, okay, this is right now, this is where the signs are leading, and this is what I should do next. And so it's been a great adventure, and really it's been an opportunity to get to continue to work and serve many different incredible leaders. And writing is still primarily the capacity that I bring to them, but I also help them more broadly at times with strategy and communications in general.
While you were a student at Hillsdale, what were you involved in, and do you think these involvements played any role in your career choice?
Sure. So I was involved in quite a bit, definitely a lot of the, things that a lot of students are involved in. I was in RA for 3 years. I was always, and that was a great experience. I worked in career services at one point. I was a student ambassador. At one point, I worked in the president's office. And let's see, what else? It's such a long time ago, I have to remember. I was a Kappa, although I did not join immediately, but I had a great experience. And I was always involved in some Bible study with friends. And I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but those are the things that immediately come to mind.
All right, Brittany. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
You have been listening to Beyond the Bubble, a podcast by Hillsdale College Career Services. This show is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. I'm Lauren Scott, and have a great day.
Whether you've just started teaching or spent decades in the classroom, you know there's always more to learn. But where do you start? Well, here at Hillsdale College, we have the answer for you. Tried and True, a primer on sound pedagogy by Hillsdale College professor Daniel Copeland. In this little book, you'll read lessons from more than 25 years of Dr. Copeland's classroom experience. It's all distilled into 14 easy-to-read chapters on lesson planning, assignments, and classroom management. And it will help you improve your skills and inspire you as a teacher, one of our most important professions. Whether you've been in front of the classroom for years or this is your first year, when you read Tried and True, you'll find something to help you keep improving every single day. You don't need to go at it alone. Let Dr. Copeland's real-world experience encourage you and inspire you. You can get your copy today at hillsdale.edu/true. That's hillsdale.edu/TRUE. Thanks for listening.